brain has three meningeal layers surrounding its surfaces in order to protect the brain and support the framework for the arteries, veins, and venous sinuses. The innermost vascular layer is the pia mater, next being the arachnoid layer, and the most external layer is the dura mater. The dura mater consists of two layers, the periosteal layer and the meningeal layer. The meningeal layer of the dura mater creates dural infoldings, dividing the cranium into different compartments. The two we will focus on here are the falx cerebri and the tentorium cerebelli. The falx cerebri runs along the longitudinal cerebral fissure and separates the two cerebral hemispheres. The tentorium cerebelli separates the two cerebral hemispheres from the cerebellum. As you examine the meningeal layers of the dura mater, you will also find the many dural venous sinuses. These are not true veins in the sense that they do not have valves and can flow in any direction. The dural venous sinuses have three major starting points throughout the cranium that will all connect at the internal jugular veins in order to exit the brain. Starting with the front of the brain at the superior and inferior ophthalmic veins, these drain into the cavernous sinuses. The blood then moves into the right and left, inferior and superior petrosal sinuses. The inferior then drains into the sigmoid sinuses, which then exits the brain by the IJV. The superior petrosal sinuses drain into the transverse sinus, which then leads to the sigmoid and out through the IJV. The cortex, being the next starting point, drains into the superior sagittal sinus, which runs from the crista galli to the confluence of sinuses. The confluence of sinuses extends to the transverse sinuses, which then lead to the sigmoid and out through the IJV. The final starting point of the dural venous sinuses is at the deep structures of the cortex. The inferior sagittal sinuses and the great cerebral veins join to form the straight sinuses. These straight sinuses then join the superior sagittal sinuses at the confluence of sinuses, which ultimately, of course, leads out through the internal jugular veins. Going back to the cavernous sinuses that we discussed earlier, there are many other structures that pass through these as well. The internal carotid arteries wind its way through these sinuses, as well as cranial nerves 3, 4, branches 1 and 2 of cranial nerve 5, and 6.